All right, so if you're type likes following an actual Bible, Philippians Chapter 3, we've been working on this letter that Paul wrote to a church at Philippi. Now, because we're starting a brand new series here, I want to sort of review this in order so we know where he's coming from. Philippians is a part of a group of letters called the Prison Epistles. Now, the problem with that is that sort of rolls off our tongue sometimes. I've heard preachers preach this and they'll go, now Paul was writing this from prison, and it sort of has this tone like la-di-da, right? Like Paul, oh yeah, Paul's in jail in Rome being tortured on a regular basis. Now, like, come on, let's think about that for a second. If I was to say, I stopped yesterday and saw my friend on death row in some Australian prison, your question would be, my goodness, what did he do? How did he end up in jail? Why are we listening to a prisoner? Why are we reading a letter a prisoner wrote to another group of people who were theoretically breaking the law too? And why does that matter to us? Glad you asked. Now, to understand why Paul is in jail, we have to understand a couple of things. One, there was upwards of 24 different messiahs in a 120-year period of time. So there was 24 people saying, I'm the one anointed of God to free the Jews from Roman oppression, right? There was Simon ben Guara, there was Simon Bar Kokhba, there was Menahem, there was all these guys that claimed to be the one, and they all died horrendous deaths. They all really got killed pretty badly. But there was one Messiah who came along about 20 years after Jesus, and he was smart. He just said, he stayed anonymous, and he called himself the Egyptian. And what the Egyptian did was he hired 4,000 secret assassins, and he led a secret revolt out into the wilderness. And what they did was they fit in during the day, so no one knew who they were, but then at night, they'd come out dressed in all black, and if you were a corrupt high priest or you were a corrupt government official, they would just slit your throat. They were called the Sicarii. They would just slit your throat and leave you in the ground, and then what they would do is they'd put their little Zorro symbol. There was some sort of symbol to identify we were responsible for this, right? So they would put their little Zorro symbol, and then the next day when the light was out, people would come out. And because there was no such thing as CSI Jerusalem, it was just sort of like, well, he's dead, right? And so the Egyptian was wreaking havoc on Roman occupation, and so they didn't know what to do with him, right? The other part of the story is that the Jews in Jerusalem had a real hard time with Paul, right? And you can understand this. A guy who used to torment you is now claiming to have a conversion experience that no one else saw, and it was quite magnificent. Not only did he get converted, supposedly he's claiming to have apostolic authority. They didn't buy this. And supposedly this movement was so radical that he started to interpret the Bible in ways that they didn't like. He was saying things like, don't worry about circumcision, when the Bible clearly says you need to circumcise. He was saying things like, don't worry about what you eat. Christ makes all things clean, right? And the Bible clearly said something else. And so they had a real problem with this guy, and so they bring him to Jerusalem. And they announce, they say, you got to come here and you got to give account for your preaching. That's what you got to do. You can read about this in Acts 21 if you're really interested in it. Acts 21 tells the whole story. They get Paul to Jerusalem and they simply say, hey, tell us, the rumor is everyone everywhere is saying that you're preaching against the people, the law, this place. What's going on here, right? And so Paul says, well, everybody's coming to God over there. It's really a compelling message. And they say, well, listen, we don't question that. We honor anybody coming to God. What we question is your method. And so he ends up agreeing to do a temple cleansing. A mob of Jews end up catching him in the temple, and they drag him outside to beat him to death. But the cops, the Roman soldiers, stop the beating, as you do, right? So the cops stop the beating, and then they arrest Paul, and they accuse him in Acts 21, verse 39. They accuse him of being the Egyptian who started a secret revolt of 4,000 secret assassins. They arrest him because of that. So Paul is in jail because of a false accusation. What the Jews did, they couldn't get Paul out of their hair, so they brought him to Jerusalem and then tipped off the Romans that he was the Egyptian they've been looking for, right? That is why Paul ends up in jail. Now, Pastor Ian, could you do me a favor and hand me that remote control, because I made a mistake and left it there. There we go. All right. So let's look at this. Let's dig into this a bit. And here we go. So Paul's in prison in Rome because of one false accusation and one true one. The false accusation is he was accused by the Jews of being the Egyptian that was coming against Roman occupation. The true accusation was once he got to Rome and in jail, he wouldn't come off the idea that Jesus is Lord, not Caesar. At the time of writing, the Philippians were the only church that responded to bring him food. In the first century, if you were an enemy of the state and you were in prison, they did not feed you. It was up to your family and friends. The problem is Paul isn't from Rome. And so out of all the churches Paul started, evidently the Philippian church was the one that showed up and sent a man named Epaphroditus to feed him, clothe him, give him some blankets, some comfort, things like this. Paul's awaiting a trial that would bring execution. We know that for a fact that Paul was executed by the Roman Empire. Paul has affirmed his love for them as well as their Christian character and generosity. Paul's prayer for them in the chapter 1 is that they grow in love and are shown to be authentic even when all the lights are turned on. He prays this beautiful prayer over the Philippian people where essentially he says, may you be shown to be the real deal even if all the lights are turned on. If all the lights are turned on your life, may it be shown that you are the real deal. Paul insists that the same creative power from Genesis 1 is still at work in us. This is the book where he says, he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it, a reference to creation. Essentially what he's saying is that if God was powerful enough to handle all the chaos in Genesis 1 and bring order out of it, how much more is he able to handle your chaos in order to bring new life, new creation? He can bring that forth in your life. If he could handle the chaos at creation, then your little problem is nothing, right? It's a very sort of inspiring thing for a guy that's chained to a wall awaiting execution, being tortured on a regular basis. Very sort of inspiring way to handle doubt and handle problems. Paul attempts to name the creative power. He calls this creative power Christ. In the first century, in the Roman Empire, they had two words for the force that holds all things together. The first one was logos, or word. The second one was mysterion. And he uses both. It says the logos and the mysterion are Christ. So he's making this case that Jesus is the force that's holding all things together. He uses a beautiful phrase, Christos Kurdos, essentially as Christ gets bigger, lives will get better. And that just makes sense. If the force that created it all gets elevated, the force that brings order out of chaos gets elevated, then your chaos dies to that. Paul gives hope that this situation will turn out for my deliverance or turn out for my salvation. That's in Philippians 1 verse 9. And to a first century, I can't get into this morning, but to a first century rabbi to say this will turn out for my deliverance is not saying I have enough faith to get out of this. It is my faith is great enough to go through whatever with clean hands, a clean heart, and pure taste. It's that kind of idea. It's a direct quote from the wisdom literature, particularly the book of Job and one of the Psalms. Now, it's in that context that we get to this. This is Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3, verse 1. Finally, my brothers, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you is no trouble to me, and it's safe for you. So evidently, he's repeating himself here. And then he says something that is quite in your face. Look out for the dogs, or what we might say, beware the dogs. Beware for the evildoers. Look out for those who mutilate the flesh. Obviously, he's ranting. He's lumping a certain group of people into one group, and he's going, dogs, evildoers, mutilators of the flesh. And then it gets clearer what he's talking about. For we are the circumcision, who worship by the Spirit of God and glory of Jesus Christ and put no confidence in the flesh. He's saying that there's a group of people who their confidence and their standing with God has to do with a small operation they got when they were 8 days old and didn't remember it, right? So there's a group of people who say, you know what? We are right with God because we are circumcised. He goes, beware the dogs, beware the mutilators of the flesh, beware the evildoers. We are the true circumcision. You got to understand, for a first century Jew to be saying something like this is not small potato stuff. This is in your face sort of thing. Though I have reason to have confidence in the flesh. In other words, if you want to compare credentials, let's go, right? If anyone else thinks he has reason for confidence in the flesh, I've got more. I was circumcised on the 8th day. You win. Of the people of Israel, okay. Of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews. As to the law, a Pharisee. That's just a way of saying, I've memorized the whole thing. I know it better than you. As to zeal, a persecutor of the church. As to righteousness under the law, blameless. In other words, if you want to go that way, I win. But I'm urging you not to go that way because there's a better way. And what Paul goes into is he goes into a very compelling view for a new humanity. What we would say is a new kind of church, a church that does something bigger than just honor tribal identity. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, hang on a second, I got out of bed this morning, I came to church, is this man fixing to preach a sermon on circumcision? Yes and no. All right, so give me a few minutes and we're going to go through this. I promise you'll find yourself in this. So Paul says three things. He says, first, beware the dogs. Beware the dogs. Second, beware the evildoers. And third, beware those who mutilate the flesh. Which leads to this question, what is he talking about? What's he going on about? Well, let's look at this, all right? So in the first century, there were people who came to follow Jesus from the Jewish tradition. The problem is what do you do with people from other traditions or other tribes who wanted to have faith in Jesus? What do you do when it came to Jewish rituals? And the other question is, what in the world does this have to do with us? And we're still studying this stuff. What does this have to do with us? Well, to understand this, we have to understand where the story came from. All right? When you look at the Bible, beware of people who take one verse out of the Bible out of any context and go, that's it. Now, the Bible tends to go somewhere. We got to ask the question, where is this going? And in the first 11 chapters of Genesis, the Bible's going in a very bad direction, all right? So the story of humanity is heading in the wrong trajectory, all right? So in Genesis chapter 4, a guy named Cain kills a guy named Abel. It's his brother. And you would think, well, that was violence. We're going to go away from that. But actually, what you find in the first 11 chapters of Genesis is the violence and the evil escalates in the wrong direction. Let me show you a few things around this, right? So here's Genesis chapter 4, verse 23. This is right after Cain killed Abel. So Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I've killed a man for wounding me. Now that's escalation. A guy wounded him, and he responded by killing him. That's one-upsmanship. Even in an eye for an eye, that's a wound for a wound. He goes past that and goes, you wound me, I'm going to kill you. That is called escalation. So he says, I've killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. So in Genesis chapter 4, you have a guy bragging about his ability to be more violent than the previous violent guy. That's going the wrong direction. It gets worse. 2 chapters later in Genesis chapter 6, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of his thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's a big statement. I can find no righteous thoughts amongst anybody. That's going the wrong direction. It gets worse. In Genesis chapter 11, there's a story about a tower called Babel. And the real story is about an increase in technology. This is a story about when stones were replaced by bricks, which made it easier to stack. Stones are very difficult to stack. They're odd shaped, but somebody invented a brick which allowed people to stack them and build bigger towers. Now that doesn't matter to us today because we have steel and concrete. Back then, bricks were a big deal because you could mass produce them and build a tower. Now watch what happens here. This is Genesis 11. And they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower. In other words, they're not going to use this new technology to bless anybody else. They're going to build themselves a city and themselves a tower. And watch what it says, with the top in the heavens. Now this is important because in their tradition, the flood went to the heavens. They said, we'll show God, we'll build a tower over the heavens so that the flood, if he decides to judge us again, we can out-technology God's judgment. So not only is this new technology not being used to bless other people, they're using it to serve themselves. And not only are they using it to serve themselves, they're using it to serve themselves in such a way where they have convinced themselves that this new technology allows them to outdo anything God might do to right the ship. This is going the wrong direction. In Genesis, the first 11 chapters of Genesis, everything is moving the wrong direction. Now, we need to see history in three dimensions. When ancient history today, history writers write history for one reason. Let me tell you what happened. Ancient history writers didn't do that. They wrote it in three dimensions. They wanted to tell you what happened, but the bigger point was, what does this mean? And more importantly, how does this change the way we're going to see things forever and ever and ever and ever and ever? What did this do to change the way we're going to see things from here on out, right? So the writer of Genesis, the first 11 chapters, he wants you to feel the meaning of this. And the meaning is, this whole thing could fall apart. This whole thing's hanging on by a thread. Human beings really have no hope left to their own devices, because look at what's happening here. Look what human beings did in this period of time. In the first 11 chapters of Genesis, it covers a very long period of history in 11 chapters. It's not giving you a whole lot of detail, but it's giving you a whole lot of meaning. And that meaning is, these people tend to ruin themselves. And the idea is this whole thing could fall apart, which leads me to this question. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever looked at the news and thought, man, this whole world could fall apart? Have you ever looked at the news? Please realize that the world is getting better, not worse, but the news makes money telling you what's wrong. What's wrong? And when they don't have anything to report about what's wrong, they'll tell you some sad story about a celebrity you know. If you pick it up, you'll see it, right? If they don't have anything bad to say, they'll tell you some sort of scandal from a celebrity, which gets them through the news cycle until they can tell you something bad again. The idea is that we can get to this question, well, wait a minute, is this whole thing about to fall apart? The good thing, though, is in Genesis 12, it starts to go well. Something good happens. Here's the story of that. It says, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to a land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great. Now, it doesn't stop there. Watch this, what it says. So that you will be a blessing. I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Now, you guys have heard a word from Brother Jerry about this is the year of flourishing, right? And I'm not interested so much in what to believe. You guys have well articulated what we're believing God for. My question, and I want to put some language around the other side of it, which is, how do you believe what you believe? In other words, if you did flourish, what then? What's going to happen on the other end of that? In Abraham's case, it says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make your name great. Wait a minute. So that you could be a blessing to all the people. Now, in the ancient world, this was unheard of. In the ancient world, gods were regional. So that God was in charge of that group of people, that God was in charge of that group of people, that God was in charge of that group of people, and if we need to see whose God is stronger, we'll have a battle. The idea in the ancient world was, our way is better, our God is better, our tribe is better, and if you don't see it our way, we're going to show up and kick your rear end. That's how this is going to go, right? And we'll just see whose God is bigger. But this God is setting himself apart from all the other gods in the world by saying, I want to make of you a great nation, so that you could bless all other people. No one had ever. That's an idea that was very, that would have never been heard of in the ancient world. It says, I'll bless those who bless you, and who dishonors you I will curse. But in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. In other words, anyone that wants in on this can get in on this, and woe be to those who stand against it. Because this is the first time in Scripture that you see a new type of humanity. Here's what's going on, right? The first type of humanity wasn't working very well. And so God has this idea about a new sort of humanity. And in that new sort of humanity, right, all people will be blessed through this one guy. All people will be blessed. Now, let's dig into this just a little bit. So God starts with one man with the intent to bless all people. This would have been unbelievable, that no one had ever thought of this in the ancient world. This man had to be grounded in faith in God, but not just a regional God, a God that was for all other people. And this has to move from one man to one family to one tribe to one nation, to all people. This is the idea in Genesis 12. We're going to create a new humanity, a humanity that is not divided by tribal lines, by racial lines, by even geographical lines. We're not going to do that. Everybody that wants in, this God evidently is for all people. Now, that was a magnificent thought in that day, but it was too much. They had too much to sort of process there. So let's apply that. What does that have to do with us? What does it mean to be people of faith? Well, evidently, people with faith are being enrolled as cooperators with God to bring about a new sort of humanity. That being a person of faith is not just about the list of what we believe. It's an outworking of how we believe that and how we embrace and establish this new sort of humanity where all people are being included in this thing that God is doing. 2, people with faith are resistance to evil in the world. Blessing is about blessing all people. In the ancient text, evil was not doing something inherently wrong. Evil was any time you hoarded to yourself something God had done with no thought of how that's going to affect somebody else. Evidently, flourishing for flourishing's sake was not what God was about, but it was flourishing so that you could participate in what God was up to in other people. Let's say it this way. People with faith are inclusive of people who are not like them. Let's say it, and that's very challenging. Let's say it another way. If you're going to start with one man that leads to one tribe and one family and one nation to bless the world, if you're going to do that, how do you get his attention? And evidently God chose the most craziest way to get this guy's attention. He says the sign, every tribe had a sign. It could have been a mutilation on the body here or here. You would know they belong to that tribe because of some sign on the body. And God says, no. We're gonna do circumcision. No one can really see that. No one can tell. But that's going to be the sign of a group of people who are serious about participating with God in this new sort of humanity. Watch what he says. This is Genesis 17, right? This is an odd command. Abraham's very, very old, and God says, I want you to circumcise yourself with a rock, right? It's odd. First command to a 90-year-old man is pick up a rock, swing hard, don't miss. That is crazy stuff, right? 90-year-old people, their hands shake, their eyes aren't great. It's just not good. It's a perfect storm of a problem, right? Genesis 17, verse 9. To 11, watch this. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout your generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep. Between you and me and your offspring after you, every male amongst you shall be circumcised. Now, this is a Genesis 17. Can you see how years and years and years later, when a rabbi tries to reinterpret that to say, we don't really have to do that with Gentile people, that can be problematic, right? You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins. Like, this is very, very, very specific and very literal. You can't really make a case that he's being metaphorical here. He's like, no. Let me talk to you about how literal. This is very literal language. And it shall be a sign of the covenant between you and me. So this is about tribal identity. This is how you're going to know these people are part of this tribe that I'm doing a new thing with, right? This is how you're going to know they were circumcised, which leads me to all kinds of observations about tribal identity. Let's talk about it this way. We all hold our tribal identity close. Can't escape it. If you're British, you're British. If you're South African, you're South African, right? If you're black, you're black. You're white, you're white. If you're a Kiwi, sorry. If you're Australians, you're Australian. We all hold, to some degree, we all hold our tribal identity close. That matters to us. Here's what Genesis 12 is getting after, and this is what we still haven't worked out, right? Genesis 12 is teaching us that people of faith, when our tribal identity potentially harms someone else, it has crossed a bigger line. When our tribal identity works against humanity, it is counter to what God is up to. Let me illustrate, right? If you are, all right, so we're in Queensland, right? So we'd have a couple Maroon fans in here, right? Right? Oh, woo, all right, go Maroons, right? And of course, we're what, 10 Ks from New South Wales, so we got a few Blues fans in here, right? And in May, everybody gets their colors out, right? This is tribal identity, right? It's the Maroons against the Blues. And you can know who belongs to what by the shirt they wear. Whole lot easier than, right? But this is good. Right? This is good. You go to Rabina Town Center up here, right? There's going to be a group of people wearing maroon shirts and a group of people wear blue shirts, particularly around May and June when this thing called State of Origin goes on. These are tribal identity, right? And everybody supports their team, and they should. This is a great thing. But if you're wearing your Maroons jersey and you're a full-blooded Maroon. You were born in Emerald or something, right? It doesn't get no more Queensland than you, right? And you're into it, right? And you're going down, you're walking through Urbana Town Center, and there's a group of 4 people wearing blue shirts. And let's say you're a medical doctor, and you see one of them start to have a heart attack. He holds his arm, holds his chest, falls to the ground, and the other 3 wearing the blue shirt goes, help, somebody call a doctor, somebody call OOO. And you're there, and you're a doctor. And you look at that and you think, well, if he was only wearing the right shirt, I'd probably help him, right? That is when tribal identity is now counter to something much bigger in a new humanity. Blues, Maroons, Reds, Springboks, All Blacks, someone's having a heart attack, you drop your tribal identity and you help them. You do CPR. You do whatever you do. This was the idea given in Genesis 12, that when our tribal identity, which should be, it's the tension between honoring our tribal identity, honoring what we believe, and then the outworking of how we believe what we believe, and what that does to affect how we treat people not in the tribe. How do we treat the person wearing the different color? How does a Springbok treat an All Black the night before the game if there's a problem, right? Tribal identity cannot trump humanity. That our tribal identity, anytime our tribal identity trumps the goodness that God is up to in all of humanity, it's counter to what God is up to. Let's see if I can explain this using developmental psychology terms, okay? So there's 3 phases of existence. So you have a kid, right? There's egocentric existence, right? If you're a philosopher, that's called pre-conventional wisdom. Egocentric is something you see in a 2-year-old. No one tells me what to do. My favorite word is no. My other favorite word is mine. No, mine. If you quit giving to me, I have a fit. Now, at 2 years old, that is appropriate, actually. It's appropriate developmentally for a 2-year-old to sort of figure out how far can I go, where do I need to draw back, how do I get exactly everything I need from whoever can give that to me, and if I don't get it, I will throw a fit. Now, if you're 32 and someone tells you no and you throw a fit, it's off-putting, right? Because egocentricity is only cute for so far. You can only poop your pants in public to a certain age before it's like, dude, we have facilities for that. You know, he's like, yeah, but I had to go. I just pooped my pants. But no, but we have, see, but at 2 years old, you see people do things with a 2-year-old you can't believe. Like pick them up and smell their butts. You ever see that? You're like, did she do something? I don't know. And then they pick them up and they sniff their butts. And you're thinking, I don't even know that I would pass that test. Are you kidding me right now? Right? But they sniff their butts. Why? Because at 2 years old, egocentricity is sort of cool, right? But then at some point, you got to get past that to ethnocentricity. Ethnocentricity, philosophically, is called conventional wisdom. And this is, I will give it all for the tribe, but no one else. This is when someone, I'm not a parent, but I'm assuming somewhere around 8 or so, you start handing out chores, and you start explaining, hey, we're a family, and because we're a family, everybody has to pull their own weight. Now we're not going to ask you to do things that is above you, but to make your own bed and pick up your toys and things like this. We're going to ask you to do that because you are a part of something bigger than you. You're a part of a family or a tribe. And then sometime after that, hopefully, the family journeys to world-centric existence, which is called post-conventional wisdom, which is, wait a minute, we're aware about how our actions or inactions affect the whole world. The way we consume affects somebody else. The way we drive affects somebody else. The way we eat can affect somebody else. The way we give affects somebody else. The way we hoard can affect somebody else. These things affect somebody else. And when we're aware of that, then we've become world-centric, which leads me to some observations about the gospel. All right, this is where Paul is going. An egocentric gospel is this: flourish so that all of your desire for stuff is fulfilled. So there's a thing called faith, and you can work that faith so that you could flourish. But an egocentric gospel is flourish so you can have more stuff. Flourish so that our need for more things can go. Have faith so you can get more stuff. Anything that threatens your flourishing must be crushed. So in an egocentric gospel, it uses gospel language. It says Jesus, God, faith, Bible. But it actually, the outworking of it, the how to believe that is really egocentric. It's about us. But then there's an ethnocentric gospel. And an ethnocentric gospel is flourish and cheer for people just like you to flourish, right? So I'm going to believe God that I'm going to flourish. I'm going to work my faith so I can flourish. And if it so happens that you flourish too, I'm going to legitimately celebrate that because we're all a part of the same tribe. That's a step in the right direction. It uses gospel language, though, to just simply mask tribal identity. It says, wait a minute, if you believe like us, if you affirm the same statement of faith that we have, if you come to our rituals of worship, if you do that and you're just like us, then we will celebrate your flourishing. So we will celebrate our own flourishing and your flourishing as long as you're a part of our tribe. But then there's something far more profound than that, and that is a world-centric gospel. A gospel that says flourish so that you can help others flourish, so you can make somebody else's life better. I feel confident about this because I've been coming for 14 years. I feel confident that I am speaking with the heart of Jerry Savelle with this. That Jerry Savelle would not ever say, flourish and then enjoy it and don't help anybody else and don't worry about it. No, but see, if we don't hear the whole story, if we don't get to the whole heart of what faith is about. From Genesis 12, faith was about working faith so that you could flourish in order to have resources to help everybody else flourish. It wasn't just about learning enough about Scripture, learning enough about God, learning enough about this stuff so that I can know a whole lot of stuff. It's, wait a minute, how can I take this and pass it on to somebody else? How can I take this extra money I have and help feed somebody else? How can I take the extra resources I have for medicine and help give medicine to somebody? How can we take this extra shelter we have and give up a little bit of shelter ourselves so that someone else can have shelter? This has been the goal since the beginning. This, Jesus, Bible, God, faith are all about helping others see the beauty in Jesus because Jesus was drawing all humanity to himself. So let's talk about it this way. So, in Philippians, the world is starting to have faith in Jesus. Now, let me stop for a second. Let's talk about that. I have yet to be to a prayer meeting in a church yet, where at some point in that prayer meeting, somebody didn't pray, either privately or publicly, Lord, use us to draw more people to yourself, right? Lord, use us to draw more people. Lord, we're believing you for people. We're believing you that people will see the beauty of God. This is a good thing to pray. Here's the question. If that actually happened, how would we feel? What would it be like if 100 absolute pagans who knew nothing about anything, what would happen if they all bum rushed this place at once? It's what you prayed for. But then you're going to have to walk through egocentric, ethnocentric. Well, it's like you're walking a kid from 2 to 8. Are we willing to actually humble ourselves and allow these people that we're praying God to bring in? This is what was happening in the first century. The first century was like, come on, let all humanity come to know Christ. But then they started doing it, and it wasn't what they expected. These people, it surprised them. These people didn't know that they were supposed to circumcise themselves. They were surprised to find out that when you tell a 30-year-old man you got to be circumcised to be a part of this thing, that he didn't want to do it, right? They were believing God for, hey, more people. We celebrate people coming to God. But wait a minute. The rituals and the temple, they got to get to Jerusalem and worship. No. And so there was all these arguments about, wait a minute, what do we do with these people that we just prayed for? Which leads me to this observation about ourselves. If we are praying for God to bring more people in, what would we do if he actually did it? Are we willing to walk through that entire process? So in this story, the tribe is saying, we honor your conversion, but you gotta become like us. We honor the decision you made. Welcome. but there's more. You've got to become like us. And Paul is writing back to these people and saying, beware of those dogs. Beware of the people who say that the new humanity makes everybody become like one certain group of people. Beware of the dogs. And he says it 3 different ways. Watch what he says. When I show you this in Greek, it was a great old school alliterated sermon. Watch what he says. Beware the dogs, beware the evildoers, beware the mutilators of the flesh. Beware the dogs, the evildoers. You realize he never thought we'd still be reading this. He's ranting to a group of people. He's like, they're dogs. No, that's not. They're evildoers. No, they're mutilators of the flesh, right? Like he's ranting, and he uses Greek alliteration to make his point. Let me show you these words in Greek, because he's talking about the same group of people. Watch what he says. He says, beware the dogs. The word dogs is the word kainos. Kainos is dog. It was a metaphor in the first century for unclean. You'd say, it was actually a racial slur, really. It was, it would be as bad as saying like the N-word or something. It was bad. It's something, it's kainos. It's a dog, an outsider, an unclean one. And he's doing something very clever here. He's saying, hey, Philippians, those people are claiming, look, they've got me chained to a wall awaiting execution. I can't get there. What we find out later in Acts is that they sent a delegation to all of Paul's churches to teach them how they're going to think. So Paul's having to do in letter form, and he's trying to counteract what live people are doing in Philippi. And he's like, beware, they're telling you you're unclean if you don't do this. I'm telling you they are the unclean ones. They are the kainos. Beware of the dogs. Then he says, beware of the evildoers. The word evildoer is kakos, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's evildoer, foul, toxic, it's waste. It's where we get the word caca from. Like, oh, you're full of caca. Like, it's that, it is that. It gets translated evildoer, which sounds like someone's doing something inherently evil. But the bigger connotation is beware of the unclean. Beware of the ones full of crap. Beware of the ones, the workers of bullcrap. Beware of the workers of poop. Beware of those full of caca. Beware the dogs. They are full of cacos. He is not mucking around here. He is, hey, beware of the kainos because they're full of cacos. Beware of that. He is not mincing words at all. And then the third one, the mutilators of the flesh. The word mutilation is katatomen. But remember what he says right after that. He says, for we are the true circumcision. It's a play on words. Katatomen is to mutilate, to cut to pieces. Peritomen is to circumcise. Perimeter. So peritomen is to cut around. I don't think I need to explain that anymore without going to 7th grade anatomy class, right? Peritomen, to cut around. Katatomen is to chop into pieces. In Galatians later, he says, if they want to circumcise so bad, I just wish they'd cut it all off, right? Just go ahead and just chop the whole thing off, right? And that's in Galatians chapter 5. It's in the Bible. You can go read that later, right? He says, beware of the kainos because they're full of kakos. If they want to peritomen to make you fit in, I just wish they'd go ahead and cut. They're just cutting. They're mutilators. They think they're doing something neat and clean, but they're not. They are mutilators of the flesh. Now, which leads me to a few questions. What do we do with this? Like, this is profound. Philippians 3 is profound confrontation of people who were letting tribal identity affect how they were treating everybody else. Which leads me to this question, are we guilty of that? So great sermons are not meant to be agreed with or disagreed with, right? So if you come up to me afterwards and say, I love that, I agree with you, you've missed the point. If you say, I hated that, I disagree with you, you also missed the point. Great sermons are not meant to be agreed with or disagreed with. Declarations are meant to be agreed with or disagreed with. Sermons are meant to be wrestled with. What good does this sermon do you if you're not willing to ask a few questions of it and wrestle with it a bit? So let's talk about a few questions that we could wrestle with around this. One, do we have faith to flourish for egocentric, ethnocentric, or world-centric reasons? What's your motive? Do you simply want more stuff, or are we existing to allow our tribe to flourish? Or is it even more profound than that? Do we want our tribe to flourish so that somehow our tribe can bless people not like us? Let's say it this way. Do we present the gospel with an even me tone? Here's what I mean by that. That we don't think we're more righteous. We don't think we're more clean. Jesus loves even me. If I told you about all my darkness, you'd be surprised that Jesus loves me too. And you could come in. You could be a part of this. Yeah, but I was a criminal. I know, but you could be a part. Yeah, but I struggle with my sexuality. I know, but Jesus loves you as well. Yeah, I struggle with unrepentant overeating. I know you do. It's obvious. Your blood type's chicken gravy. We can all see this, right? But you're not surprising anybody, right? We understand. We all, no one's going to be surprised when we find out your true eating habits. We can say, right? But come on, hey, come on in. If I told you all my darkness, you'd be really surprised too. Do we present the gospel with an even me, or do we take one thing that's unique, one thing about our belief system that's unique, one thing about our code, one thing about something, go, well, unless you're this, we're cleaner. That is beware of the dog. Do we let people belong before they believe or behave? This is one outworking of it. Do we pray to God to allow people to see the grace of Jesus, but then resist the humility it would take to let them be what they are? Right? Do we allow people to fully belong here before they believe and become like us, and before they learn to behave? Listen, gone are the days. This was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, this is how church growth worked. Find people who already know how to behave, bring them here, we'll teach them what to believe, and then they can belong. Well, that's tribe, that's country club, that's terrible stuff, right? The way by far, and it's going the right direction, is I don't care what you are, who you are, where you came from, what your current thought is. You can belong here because we believe that the Spirit of the risen Christ is the only way to make permanent change, and we're going to trust Him to do all the convicting and all the changing. And on the way there, you can belong here because we're in a tribe that believes God is for all people, even us, even you. You can't want mercy for yourself and then justice for everybody else. It just doesn't work that way. Let's say it this way. Where are we tempted to use the gospel to simply validate our tribal identity? Is there any place that we use words like Jesus, God, faith? Is there any sense that we've come to believe that we are so aligned with God that when we speak of God, we're just speaking of ourselves with a giant megaphone, right? Like, you don't want to do that. Right? God is in the process of forming all of us still, and we're not even close. We haven't even scratched the surface of what God is doing. Where do we use our codes and our good things and even our Bibles to go, we belong and you don't? Let's say it this way. Do we believe that we're a bit better, more righteous or more pure? Is there any sense that we're like that? Beware of that dog. Beware of that dog. Let's say it this way. In what sense are we an evildoer? Is there any sense that we're a bit full of kakos? Is there any sense of that? This happened to me just a few months ago. I was at a church, and someone was talking to me afterwards, and they were like, man, I was looking at your schedule. How do you hang with them and them? I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we've seen your schedule. You've done a state conference for the Seventh-day Adventists, and you've also taught for the Catholics, and you hang out with these Word of Faith people. And then you've done an Assembly of God National Conference. But you've also done a Baptist National Conference somewhere else. There's this one place you would have had to wear a robe. How do you hang out with all these people? How does that not confuse what you actually believe? Now, that one question told me everything I needed to know about that person. And I'm thinking, you can't hang out with people not like you? You can't live in peace with people that believe a little? Isn't the cross and resurrection a bit more unifying than that? Like, no matter what this person here believes or this person here believes, at the end of the day, if my hands are around the foot of the cross and his hands are around the foot of the cross, aren't we brothers? Beware of that dog. It is full of kakos. You know what? I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you, but if you say one thing I don't agree with, I'm not going to listen to you ever again. Are you 7? You can't listen to someone unless they already agree with you? You can't read books unless you already agree with what the author says? Beware of that dog. That is full of cuckos. We don't love them until they convert. Beware of that dog. I met some very moving people, and I can't mention their names because where they are is illegal. And well, it's illegal what they're doing. So it's not illegal what they're doing. To proselytize is illegal. So to evangelize is illegal. And I was telling them about the frustration of how hard it would be to convert this poor group of people that are from a different tradition. And they went, you know what it was at first, but we shifted. And what we had to ask ourselves the question, are we loving them so that they'll convert? Or are we loving them simply because it's the right thing to do? And he said, once we shifted, that it doesn't matter if they ever convert. We're going to still give them medicine. We're going to still give them food. We're going to still do that. We've seen more people come to Christ once we shifted that. The thought of, I'll go as long as I can convert them. Beware of that dog. Beware of that dog. Or any sense that our group is right or better, more educated, richer. Beware of that dog. Beware of the dog that says faith is a list of whats. In the ancient Hebrew, faith was not a what word. Faith was a who word. Who do you trust? How are you going to work your faith in who you trust so that you could flourish? But not just flourish. Flourish for your tribe. Oh, but not just flourish as a tribe. Flourish for all mankind. Paul is reasserting what God was asserting in Genesis 12, which is I have a vision for a new humanity, a new group of people who accept people not like them because the foot of the cross unites us all. That is beautiful and compelling. Amen. Beware of the dog because it can be full of cuckos. Beware of that. Let me pray for you. Lord, we love you. We honor you.
Hey, everybody. It's been a great service. I want to thank you for joining us. I'd like to take this time to say thanks once again. Maybe you'll want to become a part of that family of the Lord Jesus Christ, our family. Not about joining a church, it's about joining your family that goes beyond all sorts of boundaries and barriers. You need to be able to say that simple prayer with us. If you'd like to follow me, you say, Jesus, come into my life. Take hold of me, lead me, guide me. Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take my place on the cross and in hell, and so that I may live a life that is pleasing unto you. Thank you, Father, for sending Jesus. Holy Spirit, come in and empower me to live a life that will be pleasing to God. I want to thank you for saying that prayer and joining our family. We'd love to be in contact with you. If you would respond to the details on the website via email or phone, we'd love to be able to send some resources to you. God bless and have a wonderful day.